Just out of curiosity, what is the oldest street name in Singapore?
That would be High Street. It's the very first street laid out in Singapore. From the turn of the century until the 1960s, High Street was a popular shopping street for highbrow products.
Hi, I'm Shabir and this is the Library Report, a series where we meet interesting people, explore exciting spaces and unearth compelling stories. Singapore's rapid urbanization and growth as a nation had cleared out many physical markers of our short but storied history. But tales of days gone by are hiding in plain sight in the name of streets and estates we move about every day. From commemoration of prominent figures to clues about early urban planning in Singapore, street names have riveting stories waiting to be uncovered. In this episode, we'll be meeting Asrina, a librarian working at the National Library, to tell us more about the interesting stories behind our streets. And don't go anywhere just yet. Stay tuned to the end of the episode for a chance to win something special. Hi Asrina, thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Hi Shabir.
So I want to know, how did you get the inspiration to research about how our streets got their names?
I was curious about the stories behind our street names and their hidden pasts. Streets in Singapore have histories woven into them, which often get overlooked.
We all know that Singapore was a British colony in the past. How did this fact impact the history and the naming of streets?
As with many aspects of a colonial rule, the British left an indelible mark on Singapore's urban planning. Zones were created and assigned to ethnic communities under Raffles orders to prevent confusion and dispute. Under the British rule from the 1819 to 1965, the British named streets after their officials and British prominent figures. So we have streets such as Coleman Street, Victoria Street and Queen Street. The British also named streets after places in the United Kingdom such as Oxford Road and Cambridge Road. In addition to that, the colonial government also named streets after economic activities and landmarks. For instance, Boat Quay was named after boats that docked there, and Orchard Road was named after orchards that once grew there.
I never knew that. That's quite fascinating actually. So what happened post-independence?
After Singapore gained independence in 1965, the government began to shape its own toponymic policies. The decision was then made to retain colonial-era road names. According to Dr. Victor Savage, a geographer and co-author of Singapore Street Names, Singapore was the only one of the very few countries in the tropical world which had kept their colonial-era road names. Most countries in Asia or Africa decided to vernacularize their names, even country names.
What were some of the practical considerations in retaining these street names?
Changing road names was likely to disorient people and cause inconvenience to emergency services and the public from locating places quickly. So a variety of names from the colonial period, mainly those of prominent British and local Asian figures, have survived till today.
I see. But that makes me wonder, what was the process like in naming the streets in post-independence Singapore?
In 1967, the Minister of Finance established an advisory committee on the naming of roads and streets. They wanted to steer clear of old colonial nuances of British towns, people and royalty, and prioritize local names. Malay names were preferred, while English ones would reflect the historical background of the area, local flora and fauna, and the physical nature of the area. So a street can only be named after a person if the individual had performed outstanding public service.
Right, and what about the initial prevalence of Malay street names? Can you tell me more about that?
Initially, street names in new housing estates were given Malay names. Road and street were also substituted with the Malay equivalent jalan or lorong. There was resistance to using Malay street names as not everyone could pronounce them accurately and few knew the meanings of the names. After that, the new proposed naming guidelines were established. Street names have to reflect the multilingual, multiracial and multicultural context of the society. They also have to be easily translated or pronounced in the other official languages.
So I realized through your research that there are categories for street names. Can you tell me more about that?
There are 4 different types of street names in Singapore. They are commemorative, descriptive, thematic, and British colonial. So for instance, under commemorative names, we have street names like Crawford Street, Anderson Road, and Fullerton Road. These were used to commemorate and honour prominent people that have contributed significantly to the country. Under descriptive street names, there are streets named after agricultural, economic activities or landmarks. For example, physical landmarks gave rise to names like Temple Street, Pagoda Street and Club Street. Under thematic street names is the Teachers' Estate, Opera Estate and Senate Estate, where the streets have names inspired by a similar theme. For instance, Opera Estate has names inspired by European operas or bangsawan like Figaro Street, Jalan Bintang Tiga and Carmen Street. And lastly, British colonial street names that were named after British towns, governors or royalty. For example, Oxford Road was named after a county in Britain and King George's Avenue was named after a British monarch.
Just out of curiosity, what is the oldest street name in Singapore?
That would be High Street. It's the very first street laid out in Singapore. From the turn of the century until the 1960s, High Street was a popular shopping street for highbrow products. Many Sindhi and silk merchants set up family-owned textile shops here. They were well known for their imported European fabrics such as laces and brocade, as well as fine tailoring. Key landmarks include Old Parliament House and former Supreme Court building. This street continued to be Singapore's premier shopping belt to the 1960s with department stores such as Aurora, Shorter Mall and Metro, attracting shoppers for quality merchandise.
Oh, it would be so cool to take a walk down these iconic streets, back in their heyday.
It's not impossible, Shabir. Let me take you to one of my favorite estates with some of the most interesting street names. Follow me.
Whoa, let's go. Can you tell me where we are now?
We are in the unique little corner of Singapore called Teachers' Estate. It has an interesting history where original homeowners in the area shared a similar profession. The primary reason this area was built was because the Teachers' Union wanted a clubhouse for its members.
Well, looking at street names, I can't help but realize there seems to be a similar theme. Could you tell me more about that?
That's right, they do share a similar theme. Back then, the Housing Committee met with the Advisory Committee on the naming of roads and streets to suggest that roads in Teachers' Estate be named after poets and well-known literary figures. For instance, the street named Munshi Abdullah Walk is named after Munshi Abdullah, the father of modern Malay literature. He was a language teacher, interpreter and scribe who tutored Stanford Raffles in Malay. Other examples include Kalidasa Avenue, named after one of the greatest poets and playwrights in India who lived around the 5th century. Lipo Avenue, named after the renowned Chinese poet Lipo, also known as Li Bai, who lived during the Tang Dynasty.
Whoa, I never realized that our streets are imbued with such rich historical context. But what about today? What is the modern day street naming process like?
Now, the street naming process in Singapore is overseen by the Street and Building Names Board. The SBNB was set up in 2003 and comprises representatives from the government agencies, private sector and academia. It evaluates and approves street, building and estate name applications to ensure that names are appropriate in the context of the location and the physical attributes of the buildings and streets. One of the newest examples coined by the SBNB is the series of street names in One North using Fusionopolis to relate to the information technology industry and Biopolis for the biomedical industry.
Personally, what are the most interesting street names or estate names? Could you share with us?
In Siglap, there is a small estate known as the Keris Estate. During the 1950s, Cathay Keris Studio was located at 532D East Coast Road. Years later, streets in the nearby private residential area were named after Malay films produced by Cathay Keris, such as Jalan Buloh Perindu and Jalan Selendang Delima. I thought that was interesting as I also grew up watching those films.
It feels like we're experiencing history under our feet as we move about the island daily. That's not something that I think about usually. How do you think the evolution of street names has reflected the journey of Singapore as a nation?
Street names in Singapore reflect our roots as a British colony and the historical background of the specific areas. Our streets also capture the multilingual, multiracial and multicultural nature of our society as we also acknowledge and honour prominent people and their contributions to Singapore's development to become what it is today.
So what's in a name? When it comes to Singapore streets, it's far more than mere geographical markers. I've never realized that so many of them have got interesting and unique stories to tell. What do you think? To stand a chance at winning $30 gift vouchers, comment below and tell us which is your most favorite or unique Singapore street and why. Thank you for watching this episode of the Library Report. If you enjoyed this video, as always, give it a like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you will know next time when we upload a video. Until then, see you.